Hello and welcome to the CEWA Talent Identification Program. My name's Dr. Shane Glasson. I'm the consultant responsible for this program, and this YouTube presentation serves as an information session to provide you with background with regard to the program you're about to undertake. So, as Simon Sinek says, let's start with the why. In other words, what is the why, the very reason for the CEWA Talent Identification Program? So in order to frame that for you, we need to look at a number of intersecting problems that face CEWA when it comes to finding our next generation of great leaders and forming them. So the first problem stems from a traditional reliance on self-nomination for leadership development throughout the system. So what that means is, in the past, let's say over the past 40 or 50 years, we have relied upon really good people to stick their hand up and say, hey, I'd like to be developed and considered for leadership roles. But I think we would all agree that the world has certainly moved on from that. We also have a problem in our system known as the halo effect. And what the halo effect actually means is that some leaders actually think they're very good at certain things. So in other words, they develop a bit of a halo above their heads. And when other people come along that reflect back to them what they think is good about themselves, these leaders actually provide those people with preferential treatment. Now, that's great if the leader has tremendous leadership capability, but it's a real problem if that leader is deficient in some way, because what it results in is the recruitment and the development of the next generation with huge flaws in their leadership. So the CEWA Talent Identification Program seeks to overcome that. There's a lot of very talented individuals out there in our schools and at the head office of CEWA that fail to self-nominate. They don't want to lean in or push themselves forward for leadership development or apply for leadership roles. And as a result, these very talented people remain undiscovered. Catholic leadership, like all leadership, is becoming increasingly complex as time moves forward. So what we require of our leaders is a real capacity to cope with ambiguity, complexity, to make really apt or appropriate and timely decisions and effectively lead change. But the issue is not everybody coming forward for leadership development actually has that as part of their natural skill set. And the final problem that CEWA faces when it comes to leadership identification and development is that we do have an ageing leadership workforce. So in other words, our present crop of leaders are in their late 50s, moving through to their 60s, and in the next 5 to 10 years, they will transition to retirement, leaving a very large gap when it comes to people that need to fill their shoes. And at the same time, a lot of would-be people out there who are thinking about leadership are actually watching these leaders and thinking, do I really want to subject myself and my young family to those sort of pressures? So traditional aspirants are not that keen to assume leadership roles anymore. So when you combine all of those problems together, clearly CEWA has a problem. And we need to get out there and try and identify our next crop of truly great leaders before actually developing them and then positioning them and encouraging them to apply for and achieve roles that match their capabilities and their career desires. So what does the Talent ID program hope to achieve? Well, as a candidate who's about to go through the program, it's important that you understand our two major aims. And the first aim is this. We want to really uncover and find what is known as our high potentials. Now, high potentials in the literature represent the top 5% of an organisation's workforce. In other words, those people with the attributes that are required to perform really exceptionally in their existing role and in fact future leadership roles that they aspire to achieve. But also, even if you go through this program and you're not identified as high potential, this is our second aim. We want to provide all participants with really objective feedback regarding where their leadership strengths are there and where their gaps might be, before providing people with an opportunity to develop themselves. So to go away and amplify those identified strengths as well as work on their gaps. And in fact, the Talent ID process actually forms part of what we call the triad. So what we're hoping to do through the Talent ID program is to identify our high potentials. We're hoping then to take these people and develop them according to their career desires and their attributes. And that could take many forms. So it could be face-to-face professional learning. It may be mentoring or coaching. It could be online leadership development. And then what we want to do is to encourage and position those high potentials. So in other words, to really give them the tools and the skills and the advocacy that they need to really achieve that career goal that they're thinking about. So that could be a teacher aspiring to, say, an assistant principalship role if they're in a primary school, and then eventually a principalship. Or it could be taking a current principal and actually developing them and then encouraging and positioning them for a system level role such as a director, for example. So the program you're about to undertake actually has 4 stages, and you can see these stages on the screen before you. Stage 1 is what we call a Future Leaders 360. Now you're about to undertake this stage, so in a moment I'll explain exactly what that involves. If you achieve really strong data on stage 1, you will be invited to participate in stage 2. And again, I'll talk about stage 2, our learning agility assessment, a bit later on in this presentation. If you achieve really strong data on stage 2, you will be invited to participate in stage 3, which we are calling a leadership conversation. And again, I'll talk about the mechanics of that later in the presentation. And if you make it through stage 3, you'll be identified as a high potential, and you'll move to stage 4, which is our development phase, and also encouragement and positioning of you for future leadership roles that match your aspirations, so your career desires and your attributes. Now, stages 2 and 3 are actually outsourced to a partner organisation known as CEWA Consulting, and I'll explain their role a little bit later on. But before we get into the mechanics of the 4 stages associated with the Talent ID program, it's really important to talk about confidentiality. So please be assured that we have very, very strict confidentiality protocols that sit around all stages of our Talent ID program. In fact, you are the owner of the data. So the only people who actually know about your data are yourself, obviously, as a candidate, and myself as the director of the Talent ID program. Nobody else will have access to your data at any stage, and the only time that data may be released or used is if you give me permission to do so. So please be assured that we have the strictest confidentiality protocols surrounding the data and surrounding your participation in this program. Now, that's vital because clearly some people that participate in this program will not progress all the way through to stage 4. Obviously, there could be a bit of apprehension if you're in that category. You may not want your principal if you work in a school, or your director if you work at one of the head offices of CEWA, knowing about your data and your deficiencies that might be raised through the data. So please rest assured that confidentiality is incredibly strict. If you have questions about this, please feel free to give me a call. I'm more than happy to talk through the confidentiality protocols with you. So who is the target audience for the CEWA Talent Identification Program? Well, there's a couple of interested parties, and the first are teachers. So if you're watching this, you'll be thinking to yourself perhaps, yes, I'm a teacher in a school. We don't have a minimum entry requirement, so you could be a teacher with 2 years experience or a teacher with 30 years experience. So again, we anticipate that a lot of our participants will come from the teaching profession. But this does not preclude other people who are in support roles in schools or at head offices from participating. So in other words, you might be an administrative assistant, you could be a front office receptionist, you could be a finance officer. So again, this program is for you. If you work at the central office or the head office of CEWA, either in the city of Perth or in the regions, you have an opportunity to participate. So you may be a consultant, or a coordinator or a team leader. And of course, the program is open to you. And finally, we have participants in this program who may actually be in leadership roles already, and that's absolutely fine too, because those people, even though they occupy a formal leadership role at the moment, may be seeking further promotion in the future. And our previous participants would say that this is an excellent way, even for existing leaders, to get great feedback on their potential, and it really helps them to chart their future career direction. So let's have a look at stage one. So this is what you're about to undertake, and this is our Future Leaders 360. Now it's important to note here that the Future Leaders 360 is based on a very, very deep bedrock of information and theory related to the attributes of high potential individuals. Now this is a tool that was developed in-house by CEWA using a cross-state reference group, and we've now tested this tool for 2.5 years. So as the term suggests, it is a 360. So you will answer 60 questions about your leadership potential, and you will also select between 7 and 10 others or raters to actually answer the same 60 questions about you. Now the tool is conducted online. It takes about 10 minutes to complete, so it's a rather rapid survey. And again, the term 360 means that you're going to get feedback from your leader, so the person that you report to. You are going to get feedback from people at your level or peers. If you're in a leadership role, you'll be getting feedback from direct reports, those people that report to you. But you could also choose support staff. So that could be the front office receptionist at your school, for example. It could be a grounds person. And there are others as well, so other people connected to your role that have seen you in the capacity, in a professional capacity in your work. So the tool actually assesses 7 attributes of high potential individuals, and the whole tool is organised according to our lead strategic directions. So our first 2 attributes are called open and innovative. So in other words, there are questions related to how open you are to learning new things and how innovative you are with regard to your practice in whatever role you perform. Obviously, when people are really open to learning and they're very innovative, we tend to know them as learners. They certainly have a growth mindset. Attributes 3 and 4 relate to your capacity to develop trust, so how trustworthy are you, and your capacity to relate to other people. Obviously using the example of the role model of Jesus Christ, so our core figure in CEWA. And when you are trustworthy and highly relational, you have every chance of engaging well with other people. Attributes 5 and 6 are motivated and reliable. So in other words, the questions that relate to these 2 attributes sample the degree to which you are driven to achieve in the context of your current role, and how reliable you are when it comes to delivery. And clearly, people that are highly motivated and reliable are accountable. And finally, we're looking for people that are resolutely committed to the vision and the values of CEWA. And as I said before, using our role model of Jesus Christ, clearly we're looking for people with that propensity for discipleship. So the 60 questions from this 360 feed into those 7 attributes. And again, those 7 attributes: open, innovative, trustworthy, relational, motivated, reliable, and committed, are the 7 attributes that the literature refers to when we talk about high potential individuals. So, what happens after your 360 is completed? Well, you get an opportunity to come together with me to debrief your data in small groups of 15. Now, that's if you're in a metropolitan area. If you are out in the regions, those debriefs may take place face-to-face, or they may happen via teleconference. So again, you'll receive further information about that in the future. But the point is this: you get an opportunity over an extended period of time to examine your 360 data to see where you're really strong and where your gaps might be. and I'm here to guide you through the data interpretation and also to help you with regard to charting a bit of a future course for yourself. So in the debrief, you get a report which is very, very extensive, showing all of your data. And it's actually front-ended by a feedback circle that you can see on the screen at the moment. So the first circle are your self-perceptions. So in other words, this is how you rated yourself when you answered the 60 questions online. And you can see the 7 attributes of our 360 on the screen, linked to the lead strategic directions. And what happens is all of the questions under open, so there are 7 in fact, are averaged to produce a result for you for this attribute. And in this case, for open, this example, the person got a very strong score of 82. So in the debrief, after you look at your own self-perceptions, the second feedback circle actually looks at your ratings from others. So remember I said you will choose between 7 and 10 data sources or raters to answer the same 60 questions about you. So the feedback circle you can see on the screen there for others indicates the composite view of your data sources. Now in this case, this is a very pleasant surprise in this example because raters have actually rated the individual much higher than they rate themselves. So again, in the debrief, we go through your data question by question in detail, and you get a picture of how you view yourself, how others view your potential, where you're strong and where your gaps might be. Now the 3.5 hour debrief actually ends with a bit of a development planning exercise. So everybody leaves the debrief knowing where they're really strong, they know where their gaps are, and they've got a framework that they can move forward and create their own development plan to start working on amplifying their strengths, on minimizing their gaps, and moving forward. And in previous cohorts that have gone through this program, the development planning exercise has been rated very, very highly because it actually allows people to leverage off their data and chart a career course moving forward. Now you might be asking yourself a question at this stage. What actually happens if you don't progress beyond stage 1, the Future Leaders 360? So in other words, if your data isn't strong enough to justify you moving to stage 2. Well, the first thing I want to say to you, and I'll reiterate this in the debrief with you, is don't do what you can see in this image here. Now it's very natural that if you don't progress, you'll be disappointed. But it doesn't mean that you're no good, and we call this negativity bias. So to frame it very simply, if I were to give you 10 points of feedback and 9 points were incredibly positive and 1 point was a weakness or a negative, I will guarantee you that you won't walk out of the room focused on the 9 positives. You'll be thinking about the 1 negative, and that's negativity bias. So I want to say this to you. If you don't progress, you're not hopeless. And I'll reiterate that and I'll emphasize it with you, even though negativity bias will kick in. The point is, I'm not saying that you can't perform your current role effectively. I'm not saying that you won't achieve promotion. I'm not saying that the system will write you off and put a big black line through your name when it comes to leadership development or promotion. What I am saying to you is this: you're just not in the top 5% yet. So you're not a high potential at this stage. I will be saying to you very, very closely, don't take the nuclear option. In other words, don't go back to your school and hunt down the raters that you think have given you adverse data. The point is, I'm going to ask you to choose 7, 8, 9, or 10 raters, people you trust, to give you unfettered information about your leadership potential. So they will have embraced this program in the right spirit. So please don't go back if you miss out and take out the negativity bias on them. What I will be encouraging you to do is to focus on your data. So in other words, look at your 360 data, celebrate where you are very strong across those 60 measures, and accept your gaps. And then what I'd like you to do is to do this. Get up, drive your own development. So look at your gaps, look at your strengths, do some work on both, and then have another go. So if you want to, you are more than welcome to come back in 1 year from when you undertake the 360 on the provision you've driven your own development and have another go. So what does this show us? Well, it shows us that you've got resilience, that you can bounce back from adversity, and grit, that you can keep driving towards your own development. And in fact, this is what we expect from our high potentials and our future leaders. So even if you miss out, we're actually going to help you with your own development. And what I've done is created through our learning management system, ClanEd, I've actually created or curated 25 online programs aligned to the 7 attributes of the Future Leaders 360. So for example, if trust or trustworthy comes up as an area that you need to do some work on, you can access this ClanEd board and there will be specific programs that you can use to drive your own development on that front in the comfort of your own lounge room. So as you can see there on the screen, there are 19 LinkedIn Learning programs. So we have a partnership with LinkedIn Learning. And in fact, you are given a free membership to LinkedIn Learning for a year. Now that membership is worth $500, but we're giving it to you as a very valued member of our CEWA community. The LinkedIn Learning programs stretch between 30 minutes in duration and an hour and a half. So they are very short and sharp. The edX programs, so there are 6 of them, they're longer programs. So they stretch between 4 and 6 weeks in duration. They require a commitment of time of about 2 to 3 hours per week. And edX programs, they're a collection of online programs from world-leading universities such as Harvard and Stanford, and they're free, but you can apply for a certificate of completion. And those certificates cost about 100 Australian dollars. So the beautiful bit about that is you can add that certificate of completion to your CV when you're applying for future leadership roles. And both LinkedIn Learning programs and edX programs you can use towards your TRB professional renewal. So here's an example of a LinkedIn Learning program, and this relates to the attribute of open from the 360. And it's called Developing Yourself Through Failures. So this is just an example, I'm not going to go through it now, of a brilliant short course where you can actually sharpen your capacity to be open to learning. And this one is an edX program offered by Harvard University. And again, it relates to the attribute of open from the 360 called Leaders of Learning. And as you can see, this is a 6-week program online hosted by Harvard. It requires about 2 to 4 hours per week of your time, and it's a free program. And you can see there on the screen, down in the bottom right-hand corner, you pay about $100 for a certificate of completion if you want to. So again, you will be given an opportunity to drive your own development, regardless of whether you proceed or not. So if you are fortunate to proceed to stage 2, this is called a learning agility assessment. And this assessment is outsourced to our partner organisation, Kaya Consulting. Now, Kaya Consulting are experts in the field of talent identification and leadership development, and their office is in Perth, in West Perth. Now, one of the reasons we outsource it to is to protect your data and your confidentiality. So you might be thinking, stage 2, learning agility, what does it actually mean? Well, it really refers to your ability and your willingness to learn quickly in one situation before applying your learning in a very challenging and different situation to great effect. So learning agility is one of the top predictors of high potential talent. And really, the higher your learning agility, the higher your capacity for leadership. So there are 7 aspects or facets to learning agility, and this second assessment actually tests these things. So I'm going to quickly go through them now. So the tool is actually called Talent 7 because it has these 7 facets. The first facet is interpersonal acumen. In other words, your ability to relate to and connect with a diverse range of people through your work. and to leverage their skill set to great effect. Number 2 is called cognitive perspective, and in simple terms, this refers to your ability to problem solve effectively. The third facet is environmental mindfulness. So in other words, your ability for EQ, so your ability to read the play, so emotional intelligence. Can you walk into a room? Can you read the emotional currents? And can you shift and change your approach to be effective in that situation? Facet 4 is called drive to excel. So this is your ability to handle multiple projects and priorities effectively. And there's an element of motivation and drive here as well. Self-insight refers to your ability to know and accept where you're strong and where your weaknesses are, and to drive your own change, to drive your own development. Facet 6 is change alacrity, a very fancy term for whether or not you enjoy change, whether or not you can lead change effectively. And the final facet is feedback responsiveness. So this is all about your ability to seek feedback regarding your performance, to reflect on it, and to change your behaviours accordingly. Now, as you look back on that list of 7 facets, you will see connection to the 7 facets of the Future Leaders 360 from stage 1. And that's why we've chosen it. So the point is, this is a more detailed tool that takes you deeper and gives you deeper information about your potential as a leader. So as I said, the tool is called Talent 7. It is a self-review online, and there are 148 questions, and it will take you about 20 to 30 minutes to complete this assessment. Now, as with our 360 from stage 1, after you complete Talent 7, you will have the opportunity for a debrief. Now, if you're in metropolitan Perth, that debrief will take place face-to-face in a group of 20 participants. So you won't be required to share your data, but you will be debriefed collectively. If you're out in the regions, so if you're in Bunbury or the Diocese of Geraldton or Broome, you will still receive a debrief, but it will be online via a medium called Zoom. So online in small groups where your data will be debriefed. So how does the data look? Well, again, you'll be given a Talent 7 report, which has got a lot of information in it, and it's front-ended by the dashboard that you can see on the screen. So just to quickly walk you through how to interpret this, if you're looking at the dome in the middle, the one that says Overall Learning Agility, if your dial is to the right, in other words, into that deep aqua zone, that is what we call a leadership disposition. If your dial is to the left, as you can see for the dial that says interpersonal acumen, that is a technical managerial preference. And if your dial is in a red zone, as it is for Drive to Excel up at the top of the screen, that's called a derailer. In other words, when you overuse a leadership attribute or a managerial attribute, it could become a weakness. So just to put that in perspective, if you look at Drive to Excel, that dial is in a red zone on the leadership half of the dome. What that means is for this person, they're probably a highly driven person. So they're very, very capable of leading multiple projects and priorities at the one time. However, the problem is they're in a derailer, which means they're probably unlikely to be able to mentally switch off. Now, the problem with that is it could lead to mental and emotional burnout for that person. So again, this tool examines learning agility across those 7 facets, and it is a top global predictor of high potential talent. Now, it's worth saying this too, that this tool is validated, so it's very accurate. It is used globally by massive companies. BHP Billiton, for example, use this tool to identify their high potential talent. So it's going to give you, if you get to stage 2, a deeper level of understanding about your leadership potential. So again, you might be asking yourself, what happens if your data is not strong for stage 2? So what happens? Exactly the same as those people that don't progress from stage 1. You will be given access to a Claned board for Talent 7 which has 38 programs aligned to the 7 facets of the tool. So the idea is you can take your data, work out where your gaps are, and then target your own development through LinkedIn Learning programs, and there are 31. So again, they're shorter programs that range from 30 minutes to about an hour and a half, and there are 7 longer edX programs that are organised according to those 7 facets. And again, we say to people, if you miss out, go and drive your own development. A year and a half from when you undertake Talent 7, come back and talk to me, and on the provision you've driven your own learning, you will be invited to re-enter our talent process at stage 2 and undertake Talent 7 again. So for the lucky people that get great data on stage 2, they will be invited to participate in stage 3, our leadership conversation. So again, Kaya Consulting handled this part of our Talent ID program. And what this is, it's a 90-minute leadership conversation, a one-on-one conversation conducted over the telephone with an organisational psychologist. So what does a leadership conversation actually do? Well, it assesses a whole range of things, including your ability to think in multiple dimensions. Can you discern in a situation between 2 decisions where they both seem correct? Can you make appropriate and timely decisions? When you're faced with a problem, do you go out there and seek, play with and integrate new information to try and solve the problem? Can you align the capabilities of individuals that you're working with goals? In other words, can you leverage off their strengths to achieve goals? Do you have an internal locus of control? So in other words, do you believe that you're in control of things that happen in your life and in your leadership? And can you simplify complexity? Now, as is the case with stage 1 and 2, there is a debrief that comes with the leadership conversation. So the leadership conversation debrief is a chance for you to actually unpack your data. Now, if you are in a metropolitan area, you'll receive a report and the debrief will be face-to-face. If you are in a region, your debrief will be individual and it will be via teleconference or via the internet platform Zoom. And your debrief is conducted by staff from Kaya Consulting. Now, it's worth noting here as well that the leadership conversation, if you get to stage 3, is a deliberately difficult tool. So there are only 5 questions that are asked of you and there are no prompting. So in other words, the organisational psychologist is simply listening to the way that you answer questions. They are looking for markers in the words that you use and the examples that you use that demonstrate your capacity to handle complexity. And please note that the leadership conversation is a deliberately difficult conversation. It's really set up to push you into a space that is awkward because they are listening for your capacity to handle complexity. So again, if you don't proceed past stage 3, so if you're not identified as a high potential after stage 3, what happens? The same thing as stage 1 and 2. You will be given access to 33 programs from LinkedIn Learning and edX that are designed to help you to really build your gut for complexity. And again, if you want to undertake the leadership conversation again, the time period is longer. It's about 3 years. And we do expect you to go and have many experiences to try and build your gut for complexity. But again, if you do that, and ClanEd is only one way to develop your capability, come back and have a talk to me 3 years after you take the leadership conversation. And on the provision you've driven your own development, of course, we would welcome you to come back in and have a leadership conversation retest. So, what happens though if you make it through stage 1, 2 and 3 and you're identified as a high potential? Well, you enter stage 4. Now, just for your information, roughly 15% of people that commence stage 1 end up being identified as high potential. So even though the literature talks about the top 5%, clearly we have very, very strong leaders in the pipeline in CEWA So our identification rate is about 10% above that identified in the literature. So if you're identified as high potential, you'll be invited to meet with me for a high potential conversation. So these conversations span an hour and a half. So again, if you're in the metro area, they will take place face to face. If you're in the regions, they will take the form of a teleconference or a Zoom conference over the internet. Now, during that hour and a half, we do a lot of career planning. So we try and chart a course for you. So in other words, where do you see yourself in terms of your career in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? And we come up with an action plan to help you get there. Now, that action plan is completely different, high potential to high potential, and it is tailored to you. But it does involve receiving advocacy from me as the director of the Talent ID program, unofficial coaching and mentoring. I can assist you preparing applications for roles that match your desires and your attributes. I can help you with interview technique. I can be your professional referee. So there's lots of things, lots of supports that will be provided to you as an identified system high potential. You will also get access as a high potential to our high potential board through ClanEd. And there are 20 online programs that you can undertake to really elevate your leadership capacity. We have also entered into a partnership with the Australian Institute of Management. And we have 2 programs for high potentials. The High Potential 1.0 program, that consists of 5 half days of professional learning at AIM over the course of a semester. And then after you complete that program, you will be invited, if you wish to, participate in the 2.0 program, which is 3 half days conducted over a semester as well. Part of your high potential conversation could involve you participating in one or more of our series of system leadership programs, such as the Aspiring Principals program, if you have the desire to be a principal in CEWA. So again, all of that unfolds in our high potential conversation. So what do you do now? So you're getting ready to undertake the program, commencing with stage 1, the Future Leaders 360. So what I would ask you to do after you finish listening or watching this YouTube clip is to think about your raters. So who are you going to include? So as I said, you need between 7 and 10 raters. One of them must be the person that you report to. Now, if you're in a school, you must have your principal as one of your raters. That is non-negotiable. If you are a teacher, for example, in a primary school, and you report to an assistant principal, your assistant principal must be included, but you would actually enter them when it comes to setting up the tool under the heading Others. You can use peers, so those people employed at the same level as you. So give some thought as to who those people might be. If you're in a leadership role when you commence this program, you would choose people that report to you, people that you lead. You can choose support staff members from your workplace, so those people that perform a support role, such as an administrative assistant or a front office receptionist or a grounds person. And there's also a category for others, so this is everybody else. I would not recommend that you choose students or parents for this tool, because you really need people that have seen you operate well in the context of your role. If you would like to include ex-colleagues, so people that have maybe left your school or your office team, recency is important. So we say that if they left within 6 months, you can use them or include them as a rater. Please choose people that you trust, and note, do not select people who dislike you or who you've been in conflict with. As much as it's enticing to get really good information from those sorts of people, they're likely to give you good data. Remember, this is a competitive talent identification process. Now, saying that, I don't want you to, inverted commas, stack the deck. So don't just get people who are going to say great things about you. Get people you trust. People who will give you honest feedback about your leadership potential. So again, try and get the balance right as you think about your raters. Now, all you need to do in the lead up to kicking off the Future Leaders 360 is have the names of those people, their roles, and their email addresses ready for when you commence the 360. So, moving toward the end of the presentation, let's look at the summary and the timeline. So what I'd like you to do now is just take a couple of minutes to have a look at this. So first of all, the Future Leaders 360 actually commences and concludes on the dates that you can see on your screen. The Future Leaders 360 debrief will happen on the dates that you can see on the screen. So what I'd like you to do is to take a bit of time, maybe after you've viewed the whole presentation, come back to this section and think about what date actually suits you. So pick a day, pick a time, and in a minute I'm going to give you the person that you need to contact to book in your Future Leaders 360 debrief. And then after you complete your debrief, you will receive a notification by email that will invite you to participate in stage 2, or will inform you that you have not been successful. And the date of that email is indicated on the screen. So the very first thing you need to do is to book in your Future Leaders 360 debrief with our administrative assistant, Antoinette Broadhurst. Her details can be seen here on the screen. So I ask you, as soon as you can, so after you finish watching this clip, give Antoinette a call, her number is on the screen, or send her an email nominating your preferred day and time for the debrief for your 360. Now please note that the 360 is capped at 15 participants. So really, it's first in, best dressed. And if you nominate a date where it's full, Antoinette will ask you to select another day. So please have a reserved day as well that you could also attend. And finally, if you have any questions regarding the CEWA Talent Identification Program, please direct them to me. My numbers are on the screen. The best number is my mobile. I'm out of the office a lot. So if you want to ring me with any question at all, and there is no question that is silly, please ring my mobile. And if I miss you, leave your name and a contact number and I'll ring you straight back. Alternatively, you can try me by email. So finally, I'd just like to thank you so much for your willingness to participate in the CEWA Talent Identification Program. I wish you all the very best for your leadership journey, and I really look forward to engaging with you in stage 1, which is our Future Leaders 360. And finally, I do hope that you make it all the way through, and then I look forward to developing our relationship as you move through as a high potential chasing your career goals. Thank you again.